Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first official Beautiful Life podcast by my brother Ryan Holsapple for our first official episode. Ryan, how you doing?
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I'm gonna apologize in advance to everybody. My internet connection isn't very good, and it won't be for the next couple months. But I got to the point where I just really felt the need that I needed to get my thoughts out there, and it just got to the point where it wasn't I couldn't bottle them in anymore. But it looks like we're live. I just checked up on YouTube. So basically, with that being said, just gonna post the stream link and get started. So um, just some housekeeping stuff as far as why am I doing this. Um, I just I kind of come to a point where I was sitting on the boat the other night and I was just thinking to myself about how many problems we're facing, and I don't know if we can even talk about the original one that started um, a few months back in March. But I'm not sure if YouTube's still taking videos down if you say the outbreak word or whatever. But either way, things have compiled. They've gotten really bad. I graduated online. I wasn't able to graduate in person. I still haven't got my diploma, but uh, theoretically, I'm a college grad now, and I really don't have any reason, being that I own my own company and that I don't work for anybody, that I can't just say my thoughts. And with this project, in the way it is, I designed it to be what I needed it to be. And recently, I've kind of found myself not being motivated to do anything with this project because personally, I got bored with the idea that I would be restrained to talking only about politically correct self transformation and politically correct modes of thinking. And Ryan, you don't do that in your podcast, and I really admire yours. But for me, I just at some point I was just thinking is like I know I have an audience of people who would really disagree with some of the some of the opinions I have. Do I want to isolate those people, and should they be isolated from the other things I want to talk about, which is like living a beautiful life? Um, but I think that this project is really to me about providing what's needed in the world. And I think right now what's needed is a public discourse and somebody who's not afraid to say what they think. And I don't care. I have 127 subscribers, and I don't know if it just impacts one person, it would be enough to justify it to me. Um, but I don't have plans to have this blow up or anything like that. But if it did, I guess I'd be happy with it. But the point of it is to just it's out of control for me. But that's why I started the podcast. But I want to bring Ryan in. Ryan is he's getting his master's degree in Jungian psychology currently, and he's going to be going for his PhD. He's my brother, most importantly, and he has a YouTube channel, Sorting Yourself Out, which I think has 60K subs or something around there. So,
It's half that many.
oh, no, I
Or
was
35.
35, um, but a lot of subscribers.
Thanks for
And
the. And yes, and I've also started a podcast called Transformational Psychology with Ryan Holsapple.
that for a second, what do you exactly? We always have these like long conversations on complex issues, and then we are always like, "Damn, I wish that we put that on a podcast at the end of it." Um, and so I kind of just thinking, I didn't really want, I couldn't really think of a more perfect first guest than you to be on here because I feel like you and I are, we're brothers and we're very similar, but we both are coming from the same place of trying to help people and trying to sort of bridge a gap because there seems to be some sort of disconnect in the world. And that although we have different strategies, I think that we're both coming out of like a place of love and unity for mankind. If you think that's fair. Um,
Absolutely.
so I kind of want to just ask you how are you reacting right now personally? There's so much in the world that's being thrown into chaos. There's riots, there's mass protests. Something that's really bothered me is people are tearing down historical statues and monuments. Doesn't seem to be matter who they are or what their historical deed was. The fact that they have a statue seems to just be enough to be wanting to tear it down. Um, and that's outraged me. But it's if you listen to the news or you just pay attention, I think it's hard not to be put into a state of panic for where we're heading. So what are your thoughts, and how are you handling yourself personally during these times?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a very complicated that are going on right now, and I think that what's needed is conversations that have nuance. And I think the tendency is to get shoved into one polarity or another, right? Like we as human beings, we tend to get reactive. And when we see something we don't like, we feel something we don't like, it's easy to flee to the other side of the spectrum to protect ourselves from other ideas, from other ways of seeing. I think that we're seeing that a lot right now. Is a lot of shutdown of conversation and a lot of caricatures of each other's views and a lot of extremism that is incendiary. It's inflammatory, and it's shutting down the conversation that would otherwise be happening between more reasonably concerned people from different perspectives. The other problem, I think, is that because of social media, we have this horrible platform where we don't have human discussions. We have algorithmic discussions with screens that have human beings on the other side of them. So there's no real accountability or mutual respect because in our brains, we're reacting to what we see on the screen, but we're not seeing the human body language. We're not seeing the fine nuances that are behind those person's words. So we're more inclined to say things we wouldn't normally say. And we're also more if you're mostly conservative stuff, because that's what is going to keep you engaged, whether it's a caricature of the other side or whether it's things that are self-confirming or own belief system. Same thing with liberals. So we're in a situation being told that they're right and everybody thinks that the other person is wrong. And furthermore, we have a country full of people who are unemployed, many of them, who are afraid, who feel that there are massive injustices in the system, which I think in a lot of senses there's a lot of things going on that make people feel like shit's stacked against them. I think that's something to be concerned about. And also, we have people that are bad actors. And what a bad actor is somebody who's not really a part of the dialogue or the conversation or wants what's right or wants things to get better, but is just antagonist and is trying to inflame things. And so basically, we're in a really dangerous situation right now. And as someone who's psychologically trained, I'm really worried that people aren't looking within themselves for answers and aren't thinking critically about who they are and what they want, how their emotions are getting played by propaganda. Because propaganda is really manipulative, and it says, "Here, look at this violent thing," or "Look at this asshole," or "Look at this." Look at these people tearing down this statue, or look at this asshole conservative cop hitting someone. It shows you anecdotes. Anecdotes are going to naturally inflame our limbic. These violent anecdotes are going to inflame the limbic system. Is going to put us in fight, flight, or freeze. And it's not a scientific thought process. It's not a dialogue about what's actually going on. It's an algorithmic straw man that is totally fucked on all sides, and that's the way I honestly see it.
I mean, I pretty much agree with everything you said. Geez, I am. The propaganda point is really interesting. I think we're all very susceptible to that. It seems that, you can have a highly esteemed tenured professor or just an average teenager, and it seems to be like it doesn't matter. They're both susceptible to propaganda, and it's almost like at a level a part of you would like to have propaganda and believe it, because we kind of feed on that tribalism of the us and them mentality. Like, part of us wants to
Yes.
believe like there's a dragon that we have to go slay. Um, with the Black Lives Matter movement, I
But
was
we don't want to believe it's in ourselves.
right. With the Black Lives Matter movement, I was astounded because I didn't meet a single person that didn't think what the cop did was reprehensible, right? Everybody I listened to, everybody I spoke to thought that was equally evil. But what a lot of the protesters seem to be saying, and I won't say all of them, but a lot of them seem to be saying that they were fighting some person that thought that that was okay. As if that, and I'm not going to say that's what the whole movement was about. The movement is about a lot of things. But it made me very curious to the mob mentality of, there was nobody actually I saw that said that was not okay, and yet people are reacting and feeding off of it and making all these things, and some ways it's very justified, and you could say the same on the other side, right? What I want these conversations to be about, and as I expand this podcast and just have people to have conversations with, is I hope I learn more about other people's positions, and hopefully more people that watch can learn more about my position and the person I'm interviewing position, and so we can reach a more complete understanding. I think the root of all conflict is a lack of understanding at some level, right? And at the end of the day, right, most people think that they're doing a good thing, that what they're doing is justified or right. Not many people, even bad actors, they're doing something extreme, but they don't necessarily want the downfall of mankind, although some of them might. Some of them, they make justifications in their head. I'm torching this police car to stop this, or I'm shooting this guy to do this, or whatever, and even though they're doing an evil deed, they're justifying it some way. And I think that the root of all this is really these ideologies that are on both sides that just seem to be tearing people apart. And I don't know how much more people can take, and it seems like an open discussion is impossible. It's almost impossible at this point, because people take the first three words of what you're saying, and they already assume what side you're on, and then they close down and they refute.
Exactly.
They'll label you. You're a leftist libtard, or you're a racist Nazi, whatever. They don't want to have a conversation with you. They think that you're irredeemable. They're not interested in convincing you. All these, by the way, freedom of speech is a traditional liberal value. These are traditional values that this country was founded upon. The West has embraced since post-Enlightenment, is being able to have an open conversation about topics. Because if somebody's coming from this side and somebody's coming from this side, and large groups of people are on both sides, the odds are that the right way forward for society is somewhere in the middle, right? It can't be the radicals on either side that are correct, although they might be correct about one or two things, right? It's just, but we see
right.
The biggest
exactly.
One last point. I just say, I'm very moderate in my beliefs, as in I actually try to see the nuance in issues, and so I'm not really pro or against anything strongly. I go for a more moderate solution. I think that's actually most people. The problem with moderates nowadays is that, not even for all time, moderates just don't speak out. And so what all you hear is the extremists. You assume it's a civil war between these two extremes, when really the majority of people just want to be left alone, and they refuse to say anything. So I felt compelled. I'm an outspoken person, but I'm also a moderate. I felt compelled to come out and say something and to speak, because I feel like if I don't, and other people don't, we're going to be doomed to this sort of civil war between extremes, no matter how that looks. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, we've had the lockdown, and a lot of I think that can't be underestimated, how much that lockdown affected people emotionally, and physically. Their well-being was in question, right? As well as their jobs, which is also a physical threat. And then not only that, I mean, one point is there's a lot of research that indicates the Black community was way more susceptible to this COVID-19 thing. and so they weren't getting the proper health care. You could imagine, let's say you grew up in the gutter, and you've got a fucking power plant out in your backyard, and struggling to eat, and you got a single running your household. I'm just painting a picture. I'm not saying this is everybody's experience in those lower income communities. And then all of a sudden, you hear people saying that police are trying to kill black people. And then it's like, I could just imagine emotionally being in that position, how it would just be like, what the fuck? Like, where's my food? Where's my well-being? Why are other people, like, why am I not getting equality of opportunity? Other people seem to be getting more opportunities than I have. And then furthermore, I see media, what I think is a lot of it is propaganda, and people get mad at me for that. Media propaganda that is suggesting to me that police officers are directly just coming after black people. And obviously the research, the peer-reviewed research shows that police officers are not any more likely to shoot a black person. In fact, they shoot more white people, even though black people commit 50% of the crimes, not because of their skin color, but because they comprise a lot of lower income communities, and the evidence seems to suggest that inequality drives crime to some extent, or there's a very tight correlation, which doesn't have to do with skin color, it seems, as much as it has to do with the populations that have vast inequality are more likely to commit crimes. So it's more likely to bring out the neurological and epigenetic mutations that would cause people to commit those crimes. I could imagine myself growing up in a situation like that. There might be parts of me that would be more inclined to commit crimes if I didn't have the same opportunities that I actually did. And so I could see how, from the perspective of people who don't feel like there's been equality of opportunity for them, how this George Floyd incident would seem like a direct what the fuck moment, and you're coming out and you basically want equality. And so that bothers me, that we're not talking facts, right? Like, facts are like, what are the actual statistics on police? You can listen to Sam Harris's podcast and you get that, which he'll largely be called a racist. Nobody should be called a racist for talking about facts. Nobody's compassion should be in question just because they want to have a realistic discussion about what's going on. People are not being, they're being painted as the worst possible person based on, I think it's completely reasonable to say, in my estimation, that there's a problem with inequality. How deep that problem goes, it's like, that's a really important question. Jordan Peterson will often say he thinks it's right down to the very roots of nature inequality, and you can see it in the Pareto distribution, where things are very unequally distributed in basically everything across all of nature, including stars, including trees, including imps, and how their resources and mating patterns are allocated. So that's an important question. But then also, just because it is a certain way doesn't mean it ought to be that way. And does not make an ought, as great philosophers have said in the past. So what do we do about it? Well, how do we address it? There's clearly not equal opportunity right now. A lot of people have equal opportunity. That's fantastic. In order to have an honest discussion about how to make things better, we have to actually say, hey, here are the statistics. Hey, according to the statistics, best data we have right now, black people are not more likely to get shot down by officers. Does that mean that there's not racist officers? No. Does that include stop and frisk? No. So there might be more issues with roughing people up and stuff of color that aren't equally distributed. I don't know the statistics on that. I just know that we're not having an honest conversation about it. To your point, Colton, people took this one incident and they blew it up. Well, that's because it was never really about the incident. It was in my opinion, it was a combination of COVID. It was a combination of people feel like they're stuck in the gutter and they're pissed. And then it's a combination of these inflammatory extremists that use injustice as an excuse to put forward their Marxist communist agenda, which basically wants to tear down Western civilization. I think that we need a like you said, I think we need a democratic solution that is based on hearing everybody's voice. Maybe we need to inject some serious funds into these lower income communities somehow. We need to incentivize investing in lower income areas. And we need to have conversations that include facts and also include compassion, not one or the other. I guarantee you what's really scary is that everything I just said, of many people would sum that up as this guy is a white privileged racist because just because he didn't say exactly what everybody else is supposed to say right now. He didn't sign the card the same way everyone else signed it. That's really scary. That's scary that for me to come out with a different opinion is basically incriminating, especially when that opinion is supposedly supposed to be within respectful discourse.
I'm terrified with respect to your last point. I'm terrified of the future. I'm terrified of the fact that I was worried about starting a podcast where I just speak my mind. I'm not a racist. No one can tell me that I'm a racist because I know inside that I'm not a racist. And I know inside that I look at people the same and don't judge them on the character, on the qualities. I judge them on their personal qualities, not on the color of their skin. I know that. I don't need somebody to validate that for me. So I ultimately said, I'm comfortable with doing this and I'll speak my mind. If somebody calls me racist, they're wrong. And I'm okay if it'll suck if the mob comes after me. It'll suck if the mob comes after you. But at the end of the day, I am willing to be persecuted for these traditional liberal values that founded our democracy. The ability to even think. This is something that we take for granted. It has not been around forever. It's a new idea that your thoughts are even yours, that you are even yours is a super new concept. And we're risking losing it. We're risking losing it on the basis of political correctness and extremism. And 10 years ago, it was the conservative side that was trying to suppress speech with like religiosity, and saying you can't say something that goes against the Bible. You can't say
holidays.
Right. Like and the liberals came out and said that's suppressing free speech. You're breaking liberal tenets.
Right.
And there's been a switch. How come you're a conservative if you're defending free speech? Free speech is a liberal value. Somehow something that Jordan Peterson and Ryan here, if you guys didn't know, Ryan's channel was actually, it's not only a Peterson content, but it was started as a Peterson-esque page where people could apply some of the doctrine that Peterson has described as ways to fix their life. It's become a lot more than that, but Peterson's a huge inspiration to Ryan and I.
Right, and
go ahead, Ryan, if you wanna fix that.
I was just gonna say the guy who started the channel handed it off to my friend Mercury and I about a year ago, and we've since expanded it so that it's much my interests psychologically are much broader than Peterson, and at the same time, I think he's a wonderful professor and has taught me a lot. Even while I've come to have my own opinions, I mean, I think has been a very thoughtful voice as far as my education goes.
And I'd second that. He's probably been the root of me completely reevaluating myself on every level. And I think luckily enough, I was open-minded enough to say, hey, I need to question some of my beliefs. And I'll basically describe what happened, because Peterson's been warning about the dangers of politically correct authoritarians for years. And it's been at least since 2016. 2015 was about the year Ryan showed me Peterson. I think the summer of 2016. And I was entering college. And I was a democratic socialist. Nothing wrong with having a political opinion like that. I'm no longer a democratic socialist, but I had a lot of different views. And I went to college, and I was exposed to something I had never seen I'd never really seen before, which was this politically correct jargon. So I was being basically, and I'd listened to a little bit of Peterson before, but I didn't really care because I hadn't seen it, and I think that's what a lot of people react to, like, oh, there's just some weird, crazy wackos out there, and that's funny.
Mhm.
I was laughing. Oh, these people are hilarious. That's never going to happen, right? But then I went to the universities and I saw exactly what Peterson was talking about when I went to school, and it was in every class, and it got worse every year, and I really felt as if my voice, I couldn't say what I thought. I didn't feel like diversity of opinion was being preserved within the institution. So, and I said, "Where's this
It's
coming
not.
from? Where's this coming from?" It was coming from the left. And so, as a previous leftist, I had to reevaluate and say, "Wait a second. The values that made me liberal, made me a leftist, such as freedom of speech, equality of opportunity, looking at people the same, right? Being against identity politics, these were expressly being contradicted by this new leftist movement." And so I said,
Mhm.
well, that doesn't make any sense with how I viewed the world up to this point. So I started reevaluating myself, and I kind of today find myself in a more moderate position where I see the nuance in every opinion, right? I don't just take a hard stance one way or the other generally, because I think issues are too complicated. And I think a lot of people hate moderates because of that. People online really seem to hate moderates. They see, because a moderate to an extremist is the enemy. They just won't tell you they're the enemy. This is how, to a social justice warrior, a Nazi, or a white supremacist, I am just the enemy to them because I am on a different side of the political spectrum. But I'm not all the other way, right? So when they just label you, I guess the left would say, if you're any further right than me, then you must be racist, right? These views pushed me away from that. So, and listening to Peterson, it wasn't just a political transformation. It was an all-out self-transformation, looking at myself more as an individual, looking at the values of individualism versus collectivism, and reading new books, challenging the way I thought. And I'm just happy that I was open-minded enough to do that. And I'm not trying to praise myself, but it seems to be like the extremes of the extreme. They're not willing to have a conversation. So how are you going to change their mind? The root of solving this issue, there's going to be two ways this resolves. One is going to be all-out open conflict, which is seeming to be the more likely alternative at this point. Or two, people are going to talk this out, and there's going to be a solution that's reached.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to. It's so easy to get polarized by disgust response in our brains. So I'll give you an example. You see a radical liberal do something that's very upsetting. Like, for example, there was some flagellating themselves the other day on Twitter. They were whipping themselves, basically. They had these horrible whip marks on their back, and they were trying to self-harm in order to support others, which is just an absolutely reprehensible idea. And see something like that, or you see them saying all cops are bastards, which is, by the way, very prejudiced to say all cops are bastards. Or you see them kicking the shit out of somebody, right? Like just really hurting someone. All these things that people are doing out in the streets, supposed extremists, right? That are waving the banner of liberal values. You see something like that, and it's easy to respond with a reactivity that says, I'm going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There is no baby to be saved in this bathwater. This whole thing is nonsense. Right? And it's really understandable, because when you see activity like that, guess where you want to be? As far away as possible.
Exactly.
Even if there's a valuable cause circulating around this crazy behavior, it's getting lost. You look at it as whether you're, closer to the center, maybe on the right, you look at it and you think, this is all bullshit. I think that's really dangerous because there actually are viable reasons for people to be saying, I need help, or I want this issue addressed, or I think there needs to be more equal distribution of opportunity. Those are all really reasonable things that are being suffocated by crazy behavior, by just a minority of loud people. And so I just think it's really important to remember that our first impulse is often to discount the entire premise of something because of some behavior. The same thing happens on the right all the time. I meet so many people who think that being a conservative means being a racist.
Hmm.
Being a conservative means being a bad person. It's the same thing. It's like you take the worst of something and then you apply it to everything on that side of the spectrum. It seems like some sort of defense mechanism against being vulnerable to being hurt by an ideology, and so we're more likely to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, as I mentioned. So
Well,
I just think that
if you
have
label
nuance.
somebody, right, if you label a liberal, and I have conservative friends that would look at a liberal and just say that they're irredeemable if they believe X, and they'll call them a name, right? Because they labeled them that, now they are exempt from hearing that point of view.
Exactly.
And so
Why
what?
would you want to listen to an idiot?
Yeah. Or when you see liberals nowadays, or I wouldn't even call, they're not really liberals, they're authoritarian extremists. When you see social justice warriors basically claiming that
Some of them.
anybody, yes, exactly. When you see the social justice activists basically claiming that anybody to the right of the spectrum of them is a Nazi, that makes everybody to the right of them's opinion invalid, and you don't have to listen to it. Why would I listen to a Nazi? I'm not a Nazi. You have nothing valuable to say to me. I already know what the right path is. And this historical issues, it bothers me. It bothers me that it was the tipping point for me. I was willing to sit back and just basically say this is reprehensible, but I'm not going to do any. I'm just. It's not my hill to die on. But as soon as it became a historical debate of whether we should value history or not, it got personal for me, and it got to the point where I decided this is insanity. This isn't just some fringe idea. This is happening in a mass scale, and nobody is doing anything about it. Nobody is stopping them. I don't care. I look at Instagram.
The question is, how would you stop it?
Well, the police aren't doing anything because they're demoralized. They're not doing a damn thing. And
Right.
I look at Instagram, and all my everybody's stories and stuff, and this is just social media, but the Instagram's different than Twitter. These are just people I know. It's not like famous people. It's not like people, and the demographics of Instagram are younger and stuff, so you'd expect them to be more progressive. But I look at it, and it's all virtue signaling. It's all pandering, and it's basically none of it
Right.
none of it is informed historical opinion. It's talking about what I saw a post the other day that said, "Oh, I bet you want to post your hot summer bikini photo, but make sure that you plug a black-owned company that makes bikinis before you do that, because you need to make sure that all your posts are tailored to the movement of Black Lives Matter." It's literally straight out of George Orwell's 1984, where everything is about the movement.
Police, right?
Yeah, exactly. You can't do anything in your day without considering the Black Lives Matter movement. There's nothing. If you do, then you're a racist, and you're taking advantage of the system, and you're living a white lie. And none of these people, I would say a majority of these people have a fundamental lack of understanding when it comes to any historical evaluation. And
yeah, I didn't finish. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. It angers me beyond belief to see people who are heroes Theodore Roosevelt was literally the first president to invite a black man into the White House and have dinner with him, and he faced mass scrutiny for it. Mass scrutiny at the time, because it was not acceptable in society to have a black man sitting with the president eating dinner in the White House. And he did it. And he basically said, fuck everybody who says I'm not going to do this. I know what I want to do, and I'm going to do this. And they're taking his statue down in front of the Natural History Museum in New York. He's too controversial. The man started the modern environmentalist movement. He founded all the national parks. He's a damn hero. Everybody does bad things. Every historical figure does bad things. This is what people don't understand. There's not a single figure in history that is not severely fucked up in some way, that didn't do something fucked up, especially according to our modern moral values. Alexander the Great was a murderer. Julius Caesar, mass genocide, right? These people are bad in a lot of ways, especially when we judge them by our modern moral values. But that does not take away their accomplishments and what they mean to us when we study them. It does not mean, what is taking down the statue accomplishing? You trying to cast out that vision from your mind because you're too sensitive to see something from a different time, as somebody who had different thought patterns than you is too much to bear. I can't understand.
And I think those two examples are more of the extremes, like warlords, basically. Whereas there's plenty of people in history who were much less guilty of egregious acts and that are still being questioned now.
Winston Churchill's statue is under attack in England.
Yeah, that's a great example. So there, I saw a few statues like that being desecrated based on whatever is going on in people's minds. I want to address a few things here. One thing you really hit on is one of the things that I'm noticing going on right now is that people are not thinking fully logically. And there's mostly emotional response happening. I don't think all of it is, I don't even think most of it is coming from a place of malintent. I think a lot of it is passion that's being hijacked and replacing thinking. Let's just take the average female, for example. From an evolutionary perspective, I think it's fair to say that the mothering instinct has developed to be more sympathetic and compassionate towards people's feelings. And I have a strong caregiver inside of me that I would also say has that. So it's not a generalization about women. All women are different. Every woman is unique. I'm just talking about averages here. I'm not making generalizations. So first of all, it makes sense that a lot of people are feeling, not thinking. They're saying, "Oh my gosh, you're upset. I feel upset that you're upset. I'm upset. You're upset. We're upset.
Right.
Let's change the situation." It's like, that's not bad, okay? That's just passion without thinking. It's okay to have compassion. However, not thinking has consequences. Not thinking, the road to hell, the proverbial road to hell is paved with good intentions, right?
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
Really, like, critical thinking is really important. And talking about the best data we have and the best way to move forward and what's really going on here, and instead of just saying, "Oh, people are upset, therefore let's just rah, right?" Like, it's totally understandable, and I know a lot of people who are like that, and I totally sympathize with the idea, with the feeling of compassion and how important that feeling is and how important it is to foster that. And that's a really big part of being human. But at the same time, we can think through our compassion. We can say, "Wow, okay, people are frustrated, people are suffering. Okay, wow, I feel that. I empathize with suffering. What's going on? Let me think this through while I feel it through. Let me think and feel. Let me go back and forth between thinking and feeling. And then maybe I'll come to like a really good holistic conclusion of where I stand on this issue." that I'm really taking into account what people's needs are, right? Because if we were all just Spock, we were only critical thinkers, and we didn't have feelings, why would we give a damn how people were treated?
Right.
We wouldn't. I think logic is a servant, not a master. Heart matters. It matters that we value kindness. It matters that we value equality. These values weren't thought of based on logic. These values were come to through intuitive inclinations of humanity and connection.
Mm.
So these intuitions we have about morality and how we ought to be are actually really important. It's just we have to justify them within a matrix of logical, coherent thinking. If we don't do that, then our feelings are going to lead us off of a fucking cliff.
Absolutely.
So my argument essentially is this: we feel, and a lot of our feelings we use thinking to justify. So we have a whole set of amendments that is meant to justify how we feel life should be. We feel freedom. Oh my God, freedom's important. Justice is important. It's not like these things are just self-explanatory values that were created by this genius computer algorithm. These are actually like deeply embedded neural intuitive circuits in our body that have developed. Right? And we want to keep them, right? Because why? Because we like a lot of us, we like equality. We like the idea of mutual respect. We like the idea of taking care of each other. Not because it's somehow explainable from a logical perspective on why that's always what we should do, but because we feel like it's right. So how can we support these feelings in a way that makes that does that make sense, Colton, what I'm trying to say?
No, it's crystal clear, and the balance between the mind and the heart, or emotion and logic, is something that everybody has to contend with. And I think everybody's naturally predisposed to be leaning towards one or the other in any given issue, right? But you've harped on some really good points, because I feel a lot of empathy for these protesters. I feel a lot of empathy for people on all sides who have come to believe these things and who are very hurt. For example, this woman was just arrested for throwing a Molotov through a police car. I feel bad for that woman, that she got to the point in her life where something told her, or maybe she was manipulated or whatever, but she was put in that situation. Well, she put herself in that situation, but I feel bad that came to be, and I think that we can feel empathy for these people and how they feel, and at the same time say, hold on, I'm going to hold on to my values. I'll listen to what you have to say, but I'm not going to compromise my values being equality of opportunity, freedom of speech, right? I'm not going to compromise those values because you feel upset, right?
Right.
Even though, and people like something wrong with, I think a critical error with Ben Shapiro, even though this is his selling point, is his facts don't care about your feelings. That it's true, feelings and facts are sort of in separate spheres, but you're not going to change anybody's mind by reading off.
And you can't explain what. Right. That's right. And Jonathan Haidt lays this out in his book, The Righteous Mind, as well as an interview I just did with Dr. Greg Enriquez, where we are self-justifying human beings, right? We have feelings, and then we try to logically justify why they're okay or why they should be. A lot of times the justifications actually have nothing to do with our actual activity, our actual behavior. They're just justifications come after. And sometimes just acknowledging it is what it is, I want what I want, and I don't always have to explain myself, is actually a lot more respectable than saying, well, this is why I feel that love is so important, because here are the facts. It's like, well, you know what, like, it's actually a lot more honest just to say I love and love is important to me, period. I don't need to fucking come up with a reason why other than I like it. That's enough of a reason. I think a lot of it is like, look at people's behavior. then look at their justifications and don't assume that their justifications have anything to do with their behavior. Actually, I would even start to question the opposite. Maybe their justification has nothing. If somebody burns down a building, why'd they do that? I would just say they wanted to burn down a building. You know what I mean? Like, it's sometimes to simplify things down to this is what they did and infer that that's what they wanted to do. Now, I'm not saying all behavior is reducible to that simplicity. A lot of things have complicated antecedents. I'm saying that a lot of times they don't. And when people say they want equality, then they act in ways that aren't equality. What am I supposed to think that they want? What they say they want, or what they're doing? Somebody who whips themselves does not want equality. They want self-deprecation. They want to be less than. That's what that means. It doesn't have any other self-righteous thing underneath of it. Somebody who mistreats someone else because they say that they need to get theirs back, and then an eye for an eye will make us even. That doesn't mean that they want equality. That means that they want revenge. That means that they want violence. I think a lot of what's happening right now, some people, you have to be very careful. A lot of people are acting very respectfully. People are acting in ways they're justifying things that have nothing to do with what they're actually doing. That's my honest thoughts on what's going on right now. We have to remember, Coat, that a lot of people are not doing that. A lot of people, even a lot of protesters, are out there and they're doing it from a place of they think is right and a place of love. And maybe they don't have all the facts. Maybe they haven't thought it through to the same level that you or I have. Maybe they haven't researched the data. Maybe they haven't looked at the historical precedents of something like this. And at the same time, I think we need to be fair in our treatment of people who are out there, because it's not just one thing. There's a lot of different things going on right now. And that said, my podcast, I typically focus on individual. I don't typically focus on what's going on out there in the world. Here's what I focus on. It's how can I be better? How can I grow? How can I be the best version of myself? What does it mean to be in my own integrity? What does it mean to live a meaningful life? And I just believe if people follow that recipe for themselves, they figure out what the ingredients are that they need and they apply them, I feel like people will come to better political conclusions. People will make better choices. People are going to be less likely to not take responsibility for their actions in the world. And I think it would move us further towards a place of peace, prosperity, and equality. That's what I'm passionate about. So if you come check out my podcast, you won't often hear me doing a lot of critiquing on what's happening out in the world, because I really just believe what I just said in a big way. And I know for you, Chloe, you're in a bit of a different place, because you're serving a purpose of people need to hear what's going on, and people need to understand the issues and need to have an honest voice of reason. And you're feeling called to provide some of that commentary. And I think that's very noble. And I think we need what that is just as much as we need what I'm doing. We need everybody to play their part. Everybody followed their vision. Everybody did that thing deep inside that they know that they were meant to do or they really want to do, as long as it's not hurting themselves or somebody else. I'm talking about your vocation. I'm talking about what you're passionate about. Finding a niche in your life that feels like it fulfills your soul. If everybody did that, I think we'd be living in a much different world.
Wow, man, I couldn't have said it better myself. I don't even want this to be a political podcast. I just want to be able to say whatever I feel like I need to say, and I feel like I'm trying to provide whatever I evaluate is needed for the world, and I will ultimately fail because I'm not God, and I can't really know what the world needs. But I'm gonna do my best to try to evaluate things. And honestly, I'm just as interested in numerous amounts of other topics as I am in politics and current situation. This
Absolutely.
has just been so in my face, and so it's been like impossible to drown it out because it's everywhere. And I hate to start the podcast off like this in some ways, because I don't want people getting their first impression that this is a political show. The show is going to be discussing anything from health and fitness to personal transformation, to history, to video games, to movies, and politics as well. Right? It's going to be discussing what I'm interested in, and I really don't know who's interested in what I'm interested in. But I'm going to find out if people watch this podcast or not. But either way, I still feel motivated and compelled to do it. And I think that if we stick to trying to balance out that empathy without giving out and succumbing to lack of logic and reason and scientific basis and facts, really, can we meet in the middle where we don't have to sacrifice the tenets of our society because you feel a certain way, but also acknowledge, hey, you feel this way, how can we solve this? And I think that'd be the best way forward. And I hope that, if anything, can be a way that people can see you don't have to be on the extreme side of one or the other. You can be in the middle, and you could have a nuanced opinion about everything. And just because you support one Democratic policy doesn't mean you can't support a Republican policy. Or just because you believe in one part of this ideology doesn't mean that you can't think another part of it is reprehensible. And I think that people need to hear that.
Yep. My mentor, Dr. Strachan, says it really well. Believe what you believe it with all your heart. As soon as you find reason to believe something different, drop it like a hot potato and pick up the next thing with all your heart. In other words, you don't have to hold yourself to what you thought yesterday. You only have to come to the best conclusions that you can today. It's okay to change your mind, and it's okay to go back and revise things, and it's okay to be wrong. That is the nature of learning what we think and how we'd like to live in the world. So believe what we believe today, and there's no guarantee on what we're going to believe tomorrow.
Hell yeah, brother. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me on.
I appreciate it.
I'll talk with you soon.
All right.
Yeah, that was fun.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. With just the last few points here, if you appreciated this content, please let me know in the comment section, or you can subscribe or like. But I hope to be doing more of this. We're going to just do freeform here. I'm not really going to be planning topics ahead of time. The topics will just be decided by the guest I have and how the flow of conversation goes. So with that being said, if any of you are interested in doing a podcast with me, and if you disagree with me, please contact me. I'd love to have a conversation. This is about bridging the gap. It's about having a conversation with people. If you have a disagreement with me, let's talk it out. Let's do a podcast. Let's figure these issues out. So you can send me a DM on Discord, or message me if you know me, or leave a comment, say, hey, I want to talk these things out, and we'll see about making it happen. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'm doing another podcast at 9 a.m. Mountain Time, 11 a.m. Eastern with my friend Jake. So I will see you all then.